Well, if you've been to this website before, you know one of my favorite categories of vehicles is original and unrestored. And this 1931 Henderson KJ certainly fits that bill. This is a motorcycle I got under rather unusual circumstances. Another guy in his 90s called me. You Jay Leno, you like motorcycles? I said, yes. Well, listen, I'm getting a divorce. My old lady's driving me nuts and I got to sell my bike. And I said, what kind of bike is it? 31 Henderson KJ. He bought it back in the 40s. And he's 90 and he's getting a divorce. And I didn't want to get into the whole story. I said, well, let me know. And we worked out a price and went to Arizona and I got the bike. And as you can see, it is a beautiful, unrestored Henderson KJ. I don't know if it's ever been off the road, actually, but he probably parked it for a while in his garage. But the head's never been off, the bottom's never been opened up on it. And these were really beautiful machines. You know, the Henderson kind of gets lost in the Harley Indian wars. Most of the four-cylinder motorcycles that are out there are somewhat derived from the Henderson brothers. Henderson was the first motorcycle to go around the world in 1912. 1912, a guy drove a Henderson around the world. They set all kinds of speed records. Police departments used these because they were incredibly smooth, incredibly powerful. You could slow right down to 8 miles an hour in top gear and then accelerate to 110. If you were a cop back in the 20s and 30s and you wanted to catch a speeder, this is what you used. In fact, it has what they call a Telltale Speedometer. If you look right on here, you see the white needle, and then right next to it is a red needle. See, and that was the speed that the police officer needed to catch you. If the speed limit was 45 and you said, I wasn't doing 45, and the officer would go, look, here's how fast I had to go to catch up to you. He'd take you back, and that would be the proof. Will it hold up in court? I guess so. But that's the way they did it. These were built like a watch. These were four-cylinder engines, 80 cubic inches, and they had 5 main bearings. Now at the time, most four-cylinder automobile engines in America did not have 5 main bearings, yet this did. These were built to be incredibly reliable. Bosch magneto ignition starts under almost any circumstances. You know, this thing can sit for 6 months. Second kick, it fires right up. Got a nice big old American generator on there, makes plenty of amps, plenty of power. Pretty straightforward motor. Dipstick is right here to check your oil. Oil looks pretty clean. Now normally I'd wipe it off and put it back, but I just checked it, so don't write me a letter. Here's your oil fill right there. Transmission and crankshaft and an engine rather share the same oil. There's your Schliebler carburetor. You've got wide open, then you've got prime. When it's cold, you put it up right here. That acts as a choke. That primes it. Kickstart, obviously. Magneto ignition, so if your battery's dead, she'll run. You have brakes front and back. This here is, little gear here is for your speedometer. Center stand. These also had reverse. You could also get a Henderson with a reverse gear. I've got another 31 KJ that has reverse. This one does not have it. Most people that used it for sidecar work, that's usually the only reason you got the reverse. 3-speed gearbox. This is still one of the nicest riding motorcycles. You know, if you want to go cow trailing, if you're on like a dirt road or a fire road up in the woods, you put this thing in second gear, lug it right down, chug, chug, chug. I mean, it's just a nice handling bike with these big, wide handlebars. It was not a cheap machine. They were pretty expensive. But the KJ was the top of the line. They also built a model called the KL, which was a little faster. You got 5 more horsepower. This was 40 horsepower, which doesn't seem like a lot. But you got to remember, a modern Harley is probably only 57 or 60 horsepower. And this is 75 years earlier, and a lot lighter, and with a lot of torque. You know, it's so funny, we always think of the Honda CB 750 of 1969 as the breakthrough, a 4-cylinder motorcycle, oh my God. But people forget that the Americans had it back in the 20s and 30s, back in the teens actually. The first 4-cylinder Henderson was 1912. I'll get my little grease gun. Before you take one of these out, what you want to do is you've got your grease fittings up here. And you probably need to do this every couple of 100 miles. I tend to do it more often than I should just because I like to save it. But yeah, you pump a little grease into your valve train, hit each one of these. And this is really all you have to do. Change your oil. There's no filter. These have pressurized lubrication. Most motorcycles for this period were total loss lubrication, which means you just filled it up with oil and you ran it until the oil ran out. These had pressure lubrication. In fact, there's a number of documented cases of guys driving these on the speed ovals at 80 to 100 miles an hour flat out for hours on end to show how reliable the oil system was. You have a straight through exhaust on these. That's the color they came in, blue with the gold stripes and the cream colored wheels. I think this might have been painted maybe once in the 50s, but other than that, she's pretty stock. There's your battery box, you got your toolbox. There's no suspension other than the sprung seat, which actually works pretty good. You got suspension on the front, you got your horn, people get out of the way, and a really nice dashboard. You got your ammeter, your oil pressure gauge, your on-off light switch, throttle. You have 2 gas tanks, 2 separate tanks, one to run, one for reserve. And what you want to do is when you start one of these up, what happens is, especially on a cold day like today, your clutch plates will stick together. So you want to let it idle for a little bit on the stand and warm up and kind of go through the gears while she's sitting on the stand. Let's see how she starts. One kick, laddie. One kick. That's how you impress all the Harley guys. Just kind of walk over while you're talking to them. Hey, what's that, a Harley? Yeah, just go like that, boom, just start it right up. They think you're Superman. By golly, I think we're ready to go for a drive. Now, normally I like to wear a full-face helmet, but the talking ride I wear an open-face. In fact, Michael Jordan, the basketball player, gave me this one. He's got a Suzuki racing team. Very cool. I told him he should race Henderson, but he went with Suzuki. This bike has what they call a suicide clutch. They call it a suicide clutch because it's like committing suicide every time you use one. If you're not used to it, it can be very tricky, especially in traffic. But you know, you get used to it. It's like anything else. You put your clutch in, you drop it in first gear, and you pull away. As I mentioned, this is your advance and your retard. When you come to a light, you retard your ignition, you shut off your throttle, you put your clutch in, you put it neutral. There's a lot of stuff to do on these old bikes. You got to concentrate. So it can be a little tricky. Okay, see, I'm advancing the ignition, I'm giving it gas, I'm letting the clutch out, and I'm pulling away. It's a really comfortable bike. You can go 75 on the freeway, no problem. Now, if you've only got brakes in the back, and that's not much of a brake, if you stand on it too long, it will catch fire. So you got to be careful. There's a lot of myths about these old bikes. Old timers would say at night you can see the rear cylinder glow from the heat, but that's not really true. I never had anything like that. The one thing you walk away from these bikes is just how incredibly smooth they are. So many of the Harleys and the Indians had a thumping, which is cool in its own right. But these were dead smooth. There aren't many automobiles that are as smooth as a Henderson. And these were the most popular 4-cylinder motorcycles in the world. Got that nice bouncy seat. As you can see, very smooth. There's no return spring on the throttle, so you can just take your hands off and drive it all day long if you want to. As much as I like to restore old machinery, it's fun when you find one that doesn't need it. This bike's got 18,000 miles on it, and she runs as good as she did than the day she was new. You can ride it just like a modern bike, as long as you don't plan on doing any stopping. What a machine these were when they were new. You know, much as I like the Crocker and some of those bikes in the 30s, those are pretty expensive and pretty hard to find. The Henderson was, well, it was an expensive motorcycle, but not the most expensive. But there was nothing faster. A Duesenberg cost $20,000, and this would catch it. You know, much like ZX14 or Suzuki Hayabusa today, this was the super bike of the early 30s. There was nothing faster. I mean, a Model T went 42 miles an hour. Any of your other cars worked to go 70 or 80. This went 110. So if you're speeding in a Duesenberg, this is about the only thing that's going to catch you. Well, I'm going to go back to my garage and speed into Duesenberg and see if one of my friends can catch me. All right. Hey, thanks for checking out the bike. See you next week.